Changes at Sucker Punch, video game consoles are not doing too well. We got more info on the future of PlayStation and way more gaming news to go over. So good that you're joining the Sunday News Roundup. And let's go. Things are not looking good in the video game market as hardware sales and physical game spending in the US just had the worst November in 30 years. Matt Piscatella, who tracks the data at Circana, notes that 3.9 million units of video game hardware was sold in the US in November 2019, so the year before COVID and also the final year before the new consoles released, while previous month in November 2025 it was only 1.6 million. But his first paragraph is of course the key reason. The average price paid for a new unit of video game hardware in the US during November 2019 was $235, while in November 2025 it was $439. Like maybe you saw this too, there were so-called Black Friday deals, but for example looking at what Amazon did, they had a digital PS5 for $400, which was discounted, but it's the same price that it launched at 5 years ago. The regular PS5 was $450, so only $50 less than at launch. Only the PS5 Pro at $650 was kind of a quote-unquote nice deal. Not to mention the Xbox deals, which were basically non-existent. Normally at this point in the life cycle, consoles are $100 or $150 cheaper, and then you get the Black Friday deal, which creates a nice entry point for less hardcore players. But with the prices being basically the same and the economy in a way worse state than years prior, it's not weird that we're seeing these very low numbers. I saw a chart highlighting how people in the US plan to spend a staggering $227 less than in the prior year, which is also not surprising given the state of the world. Now it is worth noting that even with the Switch 2, the hardware sales are down significantly. The Switch 2 and the Switch 1 combined sold less this November than the Switch 1 did last year. So Nintendo totally has still some work to do to get that mainstream audience. Now it's not all doom and gloom though, far from it. Newzoo estimates that the global games market is expected to reach $197 billion in 2025, growing 7.5% year over year when combining everything. So basically the people who are still playing games are spending and playing more, and PC is growing as well. But alarm bells should be going off at PlayStation and Nintendo, the two major players still relying heavily on the traditional console business model. Sony has said many times that people on average on PlayStation 5 spend around $200 more than during the same time on PS4. But if people are simply not buying the console because of the steep entry price, Sony gets $0 and there are fewer potential customers to sell games to. As you might know, I've been very intrigued by the PlayStation 6 rumors, which indicate that Sony might go for a different strategy during the next generation. With the use of AI, they could still make a more powerful console than the PlayStation 5, while also being way cheaper. Like Sony's problem right now is that a lot of people stay on PS4 and not even go to PS5, and yeah, of course the high price of the PS5 is not helping. So if they can have like at least a cheaper entry level model that is also cheaper to manufacture for them, it could be very interesting. Now, of course, we'll have to wait and see if this is actually going to happen. I will keep you posted here. Let me know your thoughts in the comments. And I think we just got another indication of that leaked release timing for the next console, because this week we learned that Intergalactic is targeting a mid-2027 release. So that would likely be June, similar to The Last of Us Part 2. That would make it 7 years since the last Naughty Dog release, where they released the entire Uncharted trilogy and The Last of Us during the PS3 generation. We got Uncharted 4 and Part 2 during the PS4 generation. We're now only seeing one new Naughty Dog title during the PS5 generation. Obviously, making a new IP takes a ton of time, but the cancellation of The Last of Us Online did not help either. But yeah, I think them aiming for a mid-2027 release adds more fuel to the idea that the PlayStation 6 is expected at the end of 2027. Sony this generation has consistently launched its big tentpole title in October or November, so these are games that are expected to sell 10 million plus, like God of War Ragnarok, Spider-Man 2, Yotei, and next year it will be Wolverine. So yeah, Intergalactic was that title for 2027, but with them aiming for a launch in the summer, probably means that Sony has specific PlayStation 6 launch titles planned for the end of that year, my bet being Insomniac's Venom game. And this is probably also why Naughty Dog has ordered overtime for Intergalactic. Jason Schreier from Bloomberg published an article noting this release window, which is why I believe it's accurate, at least for now. But the core of the article focuses on Naughty Dog requiring employee overtime. Starting in late October, staff were asked to work a minimum of 8 extra hours per week, logging overtime internally. This was an attempt to get production back on track after several missed deadlines. They also had to be back in the office 5 days a week instead of 3, although the article notes that the employees were instructed to not work more than 60 hours per week. This mandate has now ended and things will return to normal in 2026, although there is a high chance that crunch will of course return as we get closer to launch. Now my take, obviously you want to avoid these situations where possible, but with creative projects like games, especially at this scale and tight deadlines, overtime just sometimes has to happen. It's also noted that several producers have left Naughty Dog, so there's a chance they can improve workflow and planning in the future, but I do think that if you want to work at one of the most prestigious studios in the industry, that it's not strange that extra hours are sometimes required. Really curious to hear your take. For Intergalactic, I just want to see a good gameplay demo, because right now I should be way more excited about a next Naughty Dog title than I currently am. But I love The Last of Us Part 2, especially the gameplay, so knowing that this next game will be more gameplay focused, I have no doubt that it will be awesome, but I just want to see a bit more. Now, I've been playing the Avatar DLC. Totally, if you want more Avatar and like the third movie, I would recommend checking it out. Yeah, it's more of the same. They got some cool new enemies, some dogs, some cool finishing animations. I've not finished it yet by any stretch of the imagination, and there are no reviews of it, so maybe wait for those. But yeah, I had some time. You can watch my stream on the channel. Now let's move over to more gaming news. Leave a like, of course, that would really help me out, and subscribe, because we post one of these big gaming news roundup videos every Sunday. Yes, time for quick shots, news stories I will go over quickly. In last week's Sunday video, I discussed the biggest reveals at the Game Awards. I will leave a link to that video for if you haven't watched it yet in the video description. Now let's quickly look at the winners of the show. Obviously, Expedition 33 won 9 awards, the most ever at the Game Awards, and according to estimates, it sold 200,000 units directly after the show, mostly on Steam. South of Midnight also saw a player boost after winning, showing that awards can genuinely be good for business. In terms of brand new reveals, the games that gained the most new Steam followers were Total War Warhammer 40k, followed by Tomb Raider Legacy of Atlantis, Ace Combat 8, Control Resonant, and No Law at number 5. I think that game is the biggest surprise. I received the trailer before the show and was already impressed. It looks like a fun cyberpunk style action game, but without the deep RPG elements. Now I want to show the image as well, because you clearly see that Warhammer is the most popular reveal compared to the others. Some games are, by the way, not on Steam, so that's why they're not on this image, but for example Divinity and The Fate of the Old Republic totally had the most popular trailers. The most popular trailer though, period, was for the League of Legends fighting game that is already launching in January, followed by Resident Evil 9, and Phantom Blade Zero also performed well. Moving on to Sucker Punch, because Brian Fleming, co-founder of the studio, is leaving and passing the reins to Jason Connell, co-creative director on Ghost of Yotei, and Adrian Bentley, the studio's technical director. Now in a tweet, PlayStation notes that the new studio heads will focus on the ambitious character-driven experiences that define PlayStation Studios. I have said it before, I personally think that after Ghost of Yotei Legends, which likely launches early next year, fingers crossed for January, the studio will move on to a brand new IP. Still third person, open world action adventure, but yeah, not a Ghost of title. And I'm very curious about that. And this leadership shuffle kind of reminds me of what happened at Guerrilla Games when Herman Hulst was given a more prominent role at PlayStation Studios. Also, first developers were stepping up to become actually studio heads of Guerrilla. And we got a small Guerrilla update, because the very obvious Horizon clone from Tencent, Light of Motorram, has had its Steam page removed after Sony and Tencent settled their lawsuit behind closed doors. Now the story goes that Tencent had originally approached Guerrilla about working on a Horizon game that was turned down, but then Tencent continued anyway, and then they just made small tweaks and called it Light of Motorram and revealed it, and the rest is history. So we either never see this clone again, or it returns like maybe after 2-3 years and looks completely different. Although I really doubt if that's worth Tencent's trouble, but we will find out at one point. Earlier this year we got a teaser for the next Dead Island game, no longer set in LA. Now we've learned that it's targeting a Q1 or Q2 2028 release, so 5 years after Dead Island 2. I enjoyed it more than I expected, and I totally think that they can make something special with the learnings from Dead Island 2. My bet and what I hope is a San Francisco setting with an Alcatraz level. I think that would be awesome. Before that though, we're getting Silksong Sea of Sorrow DLC in 2026, adding new areas, bosses, tools and more, and it's free for all players. Now let's hope this does not grow and becomes way bigger and then turns into its own standalone game that is released 8 years later. Silksong has now sold 7 million copies and it has even more players if you include the Game Pass. We also learned when Marathon, Bungie's next game, is coming. A Vidoc dropped this week and I actually think it looks quite awesome now. The atmosphere in particular feels very ominous, while daytime visuals really pop. Features like proximity chat and solo queue is now in the game, and they got something very cool where corpses decay over time, so if you like see a dead body from a player, you know, okay, they've been killed just recently, so the player that did that is likely still close by. It launches in March 2026, which might explain why Sony delayed Zeros to April. This launch is extremely important for both Bungie and PlayStation, so even if you don't care about extraction shooters, it's gonna be a big story next year, because if this does not deliver, it's not looking good for Bungie, but I'm holding my fingers crossed. Every week I look at the biggest leaks and rumors and rate it with stars. 3 being I believe it, and 1 being let's take this with a huge grain of salt. So Todd Howard said that most of Bethesda Game Studios is now focused on Elder Scrolls 6, thank God, but leaks now suggest that big Starfield plans are also still happening in 2026. One of the big things is more seamless spaceflight, basically fewer loading screens. Now Windows Central also reports that Starfield is coming to PlayStation 5 and Nintendo Switch 2 in 2026, alongside an expansion that was first planned for 2025. I would love for one final swan song for Starfield, but after that I would rather see Bethesda fully focus on the Elder Scrolls and finally make Fallout 5. I mean, that game is launching 2035 at this pace. So 3 stars, I believe the 2026 push, but I doubt it will be the full renaissance that they want. This coming week is Christmas, so I hope you have a great time if you are celebrating, or happy Hanukkah if you're celebrating that. I still have 2 fun videos planned for this week, plus the final news roundup of the year. But of course next year we will be back and I will be bringing you one of these Sunday videos every week. We did not miss a single Sunday in 2025 I think, and I plan to keep that going. I hope to see you at my Monday stream. You can watch that by clicking on the screen and I will speak to you very soon. Subscribe, leave a like, goodbye.